Hello everybody, my name's Hazel, well, unbeknownst to myself, I grew up with prosopagnosia. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the impact that it had on me, and then that eureka moment of suddenly realising that I wasn't the only person in the world that was perceiving or not perceiving the world in the same way as other people, and the difference that actually that knowledge has made to me. So first of all, just looking back at my childhood, I mean at school, I always felt as if I was a bit of an outsider. Other people would link up with groups, or they'd say hi to somebody in a corridor as they whiz past. They'd be able with confidence to pick people out and name them for netball teams, keep track of people when we were doing drama. And I just always felt as if I was lagging behind. And by the time I'd caught up, the person had disappeared down the corridor and the moment had passed. So I got round that with groups, I would just smile and look interested. And so I think in that way, it was, people thought that rather than being antisocial or aloof, that they just thought that I was shy and just reluctant to join in. But I wasn't completely alone. My sister is also very poor at recognising faces. So we together she's been my port in a storm. So over the years, I've been able to phone her up and say, oh, never guess what happened today, and sharing those awkward moments. So at a wedding and going over, introducing myself to somebody who looks at me blankly and says, yes, I know you're Hazel. And I spent 3 hours sitting next to her, having met her at the hen party the week before. Oh, how do you get out of that? And likewise, my sister would talk to me about being at work and being asked to take a message to a colleague who she's worked with for 5 years. But there are 3 men who look similar, identical as far as she's concerned, and she can't find which one is which. But our sharing has always been rather secret and feeling ashamed of the fact that we can't recognise people. So it's been rather like being in this weird club of 2. And just that message all the time going around in my head, you know, must try harder, must try harder. As I went through then past school and into college, the going out into the workplace especially, I realised that I needed and I wanted to become more engaged with people, to make those contacts with people. So I had to start developing some coping strategies. My first job was as a hospital play specialist in a 52-bedded paediatric ward. That's 52 children, plus all their parents and all the staff from nurses, doctors, auxiliary staff, all working on different shift bases. And it was a short stay hospital. And yes, looking back, not a good place to be. What I did was half an hour every evening, I would sit down and I would write out things. Matthew is the child with the broken arm. Peter is the one who's 2 years old and he's the mum with lots of hair, and trying to piece it together. So I put quite a lot of work into trying to remember people. Not to much avail, I have to say, and really falling back on the smile again. So in the morning, I open up the playroom door, welcoming the children and the parents, come in, talking fairly easily to everybody, but talking to everybody in exactly the same way. And I think that, I think it's good practice. I don't have favourites. I treat everybody exactly the same. But essentially what I'm doing is adopting a mask, and it's like this sort of social persona, and other people are meeting that rather than the real me, because at the minimum, it's going to take me 2 or 3 seconds to click who they are, if I get there at all. And during that time, I'm feeling quite anxious. There's a lot of thought going on, and I'm trying to look confident and welcoming. there is a price to pay with that, because they're not meeting the real me, and I know that. But I think the other side of that, if I actually met people with the real me and went up to somebody who I knew really well and looked blankly for a few seconds and then went, oh yes, that actually is, I think that would cause a huge disruption to my relationship with people. So I choose to continue to use this mask. I'd no idea that there was, this was a specific condition. And it's interesting that I feel like I've experienced the isolation of prosopagnosia without even knowing that it existed, without knowing that I had this, until that eureka moment. And lying in bed, listening to the World Service, very short item on the radio, and immediately, yes, that's me. Dashed to the computer, literally turned it on, Google, and there it all is. I'm like, why didn't anybody tell me? Why didn't I ask? Why didn't I look? Why didn't I say? And that night, I barely slept that night. It was such a revelation, because I was going from this weird club of two, myself and my sister, and don't tell anybody, but I haven't got a clue who that is. And going from there to looking at 1 in 50. That's in the UK. That means I'm one person out of 1.2 million in the UK. You know, that's a lot of people. Definitely not alone. So from there, I made contact with Birkbeck, came up here, and met Angie, and one of the friendliest faces you could hope to meet, which is very lucky, because actually this was the first time that rather this hidden secret, and I was actually meeting another person and saying up front, this is me, and that was really breaking the mold for me. I think worse than that, when you do the testing, of course, all those strategies, the fact that somebody has a hair tucked behind there or whatever it is, or their particular glasses, and they've removed them in the test, so I can't tell. You know, yes, I know, yeah, yeah, not fair. And I think it also brought me face to face with the condition and how poor I was at recognising faces, because as well as not telling other people, probably hadn't faced up to it myself or hadn't realised. So it was quite a sobering experience, but finished off with tea and biscuits and a lovely debriefing chat about what it's all about. I think even then coming here, being part of something that's recognised, realising I have an agnosia, even so, it's still possible, quite likely even, to go away and all you have is a label. And I think that's, well, in your close circle of friends, it's unlikely that you're going to have, that you're going to meet up with another person with the condition. And so in most circumstances, you're still going to be that outsider. It's also then when you tell other people, this is where I'm at, this is what life is like for me, it's actually trying to find the language has been quite a challenge. When you explain it to other people, I have to explain it 2 or 3 times and people will say, oh, but you recognise me, don't you? No, yes, yes. Yes. So, but I was very lucky because at the same time, Monica was just about to set up the London Faceblind group. So that brought me into contact with a group of people who had the same experiences, the same world experiences as me. We met up, that first meeting was in a basement room in a lovely centre near London Bridge that Monica had hired, and a small group of us met together with labels, fairly tentatively, ready to share our stories. The group continues to meet every 2 months, and now we've come out into the open. Well, not the open, because we meet here, so more space, more light, tea, coffee, biscuits come along. So it's that sharing that I think probably just even today, as you meet people, it's difficult to explain how positive that feels when something has been a secret and then you've been ashamed of it, to be able to say openly and to share those experiences and saying, I went to a film the other day and came out and my friend said, you know, what did you think of Brad Pitt? And I'm going, which one was Brad Pitt? And then I'm thinking, well, actually, what film have I just seen? Ooh. And being able to put that out to other people and somebody else saying, yes, I've been in exactly the same situation, you get that your own experiences mirrored back to you. As well as that sharing of experiences, the strategies, we talk about our own coping strategies, and a lot of those have been learned through some very painful experiences. When I've spent an hour talking to somebody and I've said, lovely to meet you, and as I've said it, I can see from their face that we've obviously met before. So I've learned to say, lovely to see you, just that little bit. And so we share those strategies with each other. And today we're gathering more strategies here. I think Angie's going to say a bit more. There's a survey that we're going to be collecting more ideas. And that's just a sort of start. Also, what we're doing on the faceblind.org.uk website is collecting those strategies. So there's a place on there where you can add in your own thoughts and suggestions. Just that idea today about the email and just thinking, just putting it on, just giving people that nudge, that indication. So I've moved on a few. I think one of the things about sharing has been also finding the language to, as we've described our experiences to each other, we've also been able to find and hone the language to explain that to our families, our friends, our work colleagues, about what it's like to be face blind, which leads me on to give a quick plug, Joe, to this book, What It's Like to Be Face Blind, where Joe, who's going to be talking next, has put together quotes from people around the whole world. So this community is coming together around the whole world. And actually reading that, I found really heartening, but also some bits of it very, very quite saddening. There is, as it comes into the books around it being written, increasingly coming across it on the radio, in articles from the tabloids to the broadsheets. And each time I see that, I feel as if my own experience is being acknowledged, the condition is being validated. I feel as if the outside world is recognising the difficulties that I have. And now, with close friends who I've told, they're actually sending me articles or links and saying, saw this and thought of you. And how much further is that on from that sort of mask of being hidden? It's a really positive experience. But I think there's one thing about talking to friends and close family about it. Then it's actually going out to the wider community. It's actually coming out. And I think my first coming out was here 2 years ago when I volunteered to talk. I wanted to be part of getting the message across, but at the same time, I was aware of feeling vulnerable and wanting to protect myself. And I'm still cautious. I still think things through. At work, colleagues are great. They understand. I think they probably had sussed before I told them that I wasn't very good at recognizing faces. But it's so reassuring to have somebody and you can go, which one is Michael? And yes. And that's been a real help to me. But if I'm going into a new situation, going on a new course, walking into a new environment, a networking event, for me, I'm still cautious. I'm still playing it by ear. And I think that's the part of that is because I know that unlike if I just said, I have dyslexia, people will, oh yes, and they'll move on. They'll understand it. They'll understand what it means. It doesn't mean I can't read. It means I don't present them with a huge bit, huge manual of instructions. But with face blindness, I know that if I say it, I'm going to have to try and explain it. that somebody may misinterpret it and say, oh, well, obviously you can't work with people at all. And so that's where the sort of public, you know, that growing public awareness is so important. And it's that fact that there are the recognition of this condition has made so much difference. I mean, it might sound over the top to say it's changed my life, but it is. I would say it has. It's certainly changed. It's added an extra layer to my when I'm interacting with different people. It's given me a new language, but more than that, it's actually changed my own view of myself, my perception of myself. So looking back, instead of berating myself for at school being on the outside, I now actually give myself credit simply for having survived. And going into the workplace, I'm proud now of the strategies that I put in place. And that's interesting. So Monica talking about, actually, you tend to focus on the times when I failed to recognize all these people, rather than celebrating, wow, yeah, that worked. And I can now feel as if, rather than being ashamed, I can actually claim my face blindness. And increasingly, at events like this, but also with the London Face Blind Group, coming together and being part of a community where I'm an insider rather than an outsider is a new experience for me, and it's something that's very positive. And that community is growing through events such as this. And my second little plug is over here, trying to get lots of people who to sign up. The London Face Blind Group is evolving now into Face Blind UK, and we're looking got a website you can take a look at. We're producing leaflets to try and educate people. So there's one for education, there's one for the health sector, HR, people working in looking at employment. But we were talking to somebody earlier who's a magistrate and saying, could you help us to write one? Because all of those are needed. It's that everydayness. And that's where, working with the scientists, we can help to identify, we can work with them to promote the awareness of the condition, but then also coming from the everyday lived experience. So we taking this advantage of this opportunity to say, if you've got any skills or think that you can want to get involved or just want to keep in touch, then there are some sign-up sheets over there, and we'll be keeping in touch with you. And yes, welcome to the Face Blind community.